Last year, Sweden's biggest newspaper published a series called the Vulnerable Digital Society, and I think it was a bit inspired by the similar series in Norway. And behind this series in Serie D and series in Sweden was Leif Nixon. And Leif Nixon has a 10-year career in IT security, and is the founder of Nixon Security, and by that I leave it up to you.
Hi, I'm Leif Nixon. This is me on Twitter. About a year ago, I changed my Twitter handle. Because, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been trying to help people. I've been trying to notify people. You have an intrusion. You have a vulnerable system. You have a system that really shouldn't be on the internet. And this is insanely hard. It takes enormous amounts of time just to find the right person to talk to. It takes a lot of energy to convince them, and it can be a very frustrating experience. Just imagine cold calling somebody saying, "Hi, you have a problem with your computer. I'm here to fix that," and getting them to believe you. That's can be an interesting experience. And after having doing this for many years, basically in my spare time, it's clear that it doesn't scale. You can't go on playing whack-a-mole with these systems. Nothing will ever get better. So I decided to adopt a new principle. Less kind one. But there is a backstory to this actually. An email which I sent to Kristoffer Örstradius at Dagens Nyheter, DN, the largest morning newspaper in Sweden. He had written a few articles on recent intrusions in Sweden, and I found them interesting and well written. So I wrote him an email from out of the blue and telling him about some of my frustrations and basically whining. And that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. We met, we talked this over, we both felt that, okay, there should be something here. We should be able to make something out of this. And we had also a couple of inspiration sources. The Norwegian paper Dagbladet, who has a long-running article series called Null Control, which is actually excellent. They find vulnerable systems in Norway and expose them. And also these guys, Robert Graham, Nalen, and Dan Tampler, who have been giving several talks about mass scanning the internet and finding stuff. And so we were kind of inspired with them and came up with a tentative plan. And after thinking about this for a while, it became obvious that there were some weaknesses in our plan, so we had to sort of go back to the drawing board. One of the nice things with working with big media is that there actually is some money, and this is a common problem in investigative journalism. So we could just call the very expensive lawyers and how should we do this without getting arrested? And Swedish law is a bit, I think it's not that common internationally that intentionally accessing digital information without authorization is illegal, even if that information is openly accessible. Okay, if you just stumble across a web page on the internet that shouldn't have been there, okay, that's not a crime because you didn't do it intentionally. But going out there and actually looking for information that shouldn't be public and viewing that information is illegal. So stuff like scanning for open VNC servers, problematic. I wrote a minimalistic VNC client that connects to an IP address and does a VNC handshake, just trying to check, is this VNC server configured with the password or not? And you sort of get a yes, no answer back. This is probably legal. Connecting to that same IP address with a real VNC client and figure out that, oh, this seems to be a hydroelectric plant, including buttons for the sluice gates, open, close. I really hope that this is honeypot. I haven't been able to trace it down. But actually, looking at this is probably illegal. Sorry. Okay, you probably wouldn't get convicted in court, but it hasn't been tried, and if you want to put this on the front page of the newspaper, you should stay away from this. The lawyers were quite insistent. So we had to sort of come up with slightly more boring plan, where we actually ask permission. Trick is finding the right person to ask permission from. Okay, so we had the legal stuff sorted. Item 1, find broken stuff. Well, hypothesis, all the broken stuff was Telnet. This is, of course, not strictly true, but it turns out that of the broken stuff, lots of it runs Telnet. And there are some things that actually, it's okay that they're running Telnet, but not that very much actually. So, okay, go for the Telnet stuff, just to find the broken stuff. 100,000 devices in Sweden exposing Telnet to the internet. Come on, what do I do with this? How do I manage this volume of data? Well, connect to them all, collect the login banners that they send you when you connect. Assuming that, okay, this is maybe slightly illegally, but we decided that probably this is just login banners. And then by string comparison, drop them into buckets. Here we have devices looking like this, devices looking like that, and then going into trying to find the interesting stuff and identifying it. And man, you know, taximeters, the little box in the taxi that tells you how much you should pay. There's a Swedish vendor of those called Halda. They are connected via 3G modems, openly accessible on the internet. When you tell that to them, you get the Windows CE command prompt without any authorization. So check the brand of your taximeters before choosing a taxi. But from all of this, how do you actually choose your targets? Well, I decided to go for the low-hanging fruit, not because I'm a bad hacker. Okay, partly because of that, but also we wanted to. This was this was one of my points. That's my points is that there are so much trivially broken stuff out there. We should go for that. We don't want to be doing stunt hacks. We want to really go for the basics. We want the stuff that we could demonstrate practically. No theoretical results and we could have done this, blah, blah, blah. We want the stuff that we actually could do. And of course, this is media, the outrage factor. This is something which should make people angry, something that actually is close to them. So, what did we end up with? Well, I'm going to talk about a few of those. One thing that happened concurrently at the same time as I was doing this, out in the Stockholm archipelago, up north, just outside Stockholm, a submarine appeared. A foreign, unknown submarine. And this triggered the largest domestic military operation in Sweden for a very long time. And they hunted that submarine all through Stockholm archipelago, down south to the southern inlet to Stockholm, right outside Muskö, that naval base. I don't know if you know about Muskö, but this used to be one of the crown jewels in the Swedish defense. It's a whole city-sized naval base underground, down into the bedrock, with tunnels leading into dry docks that can accommodate the largest ships in the Swedish Navy. Still, glass doors, nuclear-proof. This is not as important as it used to be, but it's still a pretty critical facility for Swedish defense. And they were hunting a submarine just outside. And you can perhaps sort of imagine the feeling. During this very critical incident, you find the heating system for Muskö naval base on the internet without authentication. And okay, we didn't choose to go with this. Some information, seriously, I don't think that this was really such a big problem. Probably it was just fine, but you don't want that information. So that same night I called the duty officer at the Swedish military surgeon, let them handle it. Instead, we have something slightly more mundane. This is a Sexel router issued by the Swedish ISP Irresponsible, usually called BBB.
The Norwegian
they are owned by Tele2, which is Norwegian. Irresponsible AB is a Swedish company. Turns out that when we scanned, came across, well, turned out to be on the order of hundreds of thousands of these routers. Many of them, a significant proportion, was running something called TR69, which is a management protocol that is meant for the ISPs to be able to manage their customers' routers. A significant proportion of the routers actually expose this to the internet, not just to the internal ISP, but to the internet. And they ran a version of firmware in those routers that was known to have a remote root vulnerability that had been published 18 months ago. All of the routers had a hidden admin account called kung, that is Swedish for king, with a 4-character password. Invisible to the users couldn't change this or disable it. They had interesting admin web interfaces, predictable session cookies, sister vulnerabilities, shell man injection vulnerabilities as root, and so on. It would be a very long talk if I went into all the details. But this was our first target. So, October 29, last year, this was the front page of Dagens Nyheter. Serious vulnerabilities and common modems, easy to hijack. And we actually did this. Christopher went home to a selected ordinary person, hacked our modem, redirected our internet bank, and really showed what could be done with this. And for every Irresponsible customer with one of those routers. Irresponsible got no advance warning. Christopher called their press people the evening before publication to get comments. There was major media coverage. All the large newspapers, television, radio picked this up. And it was not a good day or week for BBB. Of course, if there's anybody here working in Irresponsible, sorry. But seriously, I make jokes, but this is very important to me. Irresponsible supplied these routers to their customers. The customers had no choice. They had to run these routers. They trusted Bredbandsbolaget to keep them secure. BBB failed at that. They let their entire customer base down. They deserve to be outed. They deserve to get these bad days, these bad weeks of press. Sorry to any individuals if I ruined your day. BBB totally deserve it.
And the response?
The response, they reacted, I think they activated their entire crisis organization, and they actually, within, at least within 45 hours perhaps, 48 hours perhaps, 24 hours even, they said, oh okay, we have disabled the vulnerable interfaces on all our routers. But until it turned out that they had not disabled them, but they had moved the web interfaces to another port. Don't do that. Just don't.
So how did you feel having all the customers being vulnerable without a choice of doing any remediation themselves?
That I was very angry. And you know, I actually tried to do this in the classic responsible disclosure way. I tried to find a security person at BBB to talk to. Nobody knew any security people at BBB. And I asked people who should have known if there were one. Anyway, so was I totally evil? Was this totally irresponsible? Well, we were very careful that while we demonstrated this and explained how serious it was, we didn't reveal the vulnerabilities in such detail that it was easy to recreate. We gave BBB a full advisory with all the technical details about their bugs and gave them 30 days before we published it. No, they weren't. No, well, of course, everybody started poking their sex and modems, but in this case, I do not think much of the critical vulnerabilities leaked anyway.
So what did you do 30 days before you published?
We gave, at the evening before publication, they got the full advisory, and I told them that in 30 days this will be published, all the details. So they had 30 days to fix their stuff before all the technical details went public.
So do you think it would have been more responsible to say 30 days grace period before you publish the first article?
No, because this is media logic. If they had had advanced warning, they would have the initiative. They could issue the press releases, they could look good to the customers. And that was...
But would that have been better for the customers?
Exactly.
I mean, you're focusing on the vendor.
Yes.
What would have been best for the customers?
For Bredbandsbolaget customers, I don't think there was any difference. As far as I know, there has been no damage caused to any customer because of this, because we actually managed to keep the critical details non-public.
Did you find traces of anyone else finding this earlier?
There were indications, yes.
To navigate countries, other operators?
Sorry?
Other countries, other operators?
Attacking routers is a bread and butter operation for economic criminality. There are huge incidents. 300,000 Polish customers had their routers hacked, their internet banks redirected. 4.5 million customers in Brazil had their routers hacked a couple years ago to intercept their banking credentials. So this isn't hypothetical stuff. This is things that really happen on a large scale. In the end, it turned out that some other operators had not really managed to have their router secure either, and eventually PTS, the Swedish Postal and Telecom Authority, launched a formal investigation into all the major ISPs about how they secure their customer routers. And this is pretty cool. Me, in my spare time, hacking routers, actually triggering action from PTS. That was cool. Next thing.
But did you try to get that action triggered before you actually went public in the press about the problem? Are you certain they would have not done this?
If I had called, I don't know anybody at PTS. What should I have done? Written a letter to PTS?
Well,
I don't think that this would have happened without the publicity. That's my guess. I didn't try, so we don't know. But
you did try to get somebody active on the target.
yes,
And you find nobody, but the day before you published, you found somebody that you...
no, that was the press contact.
Okay. Did you...
Christopher called the press contact, and if a journalist at Ian calls the press contact, well, of course, they will get the attention. But
what about calling the press contact months in advance, saying that we have this, we will go if you don't do it?
why would I do that?
They're interested in papers, they don't want to.
No, if
Yeah,
you're certain, you will not achieve the improvement otherwise. I understand. But if you're not certain that you can achieve the improvement,
why would I be nice to Bredbandsbolaget?
The customers, I think, we have to focus on the customers as well. You're focusing on the vendor and
No.
only.
No, I'm protecting the customers. The customers have been screwed by the vendor, by the operator. I'm going after the operator on behalf of the customers.
And sacrifices the customers for one.
No.
What's part of the argument here, though, is that the exploit was already known several months before this.
And
There were already public exploits against the citizen devices, and they had not acted. So, are you saying that a vendor who has decided to not listen to their upstream, not listen to their vendor system, not deploy their upgrades, would somebody listen because someone else from the outside tells them to listen to the upstream?
And please note, the sensitive details were not published in the paper.
Don't you think this kind of raises a rather delicate question of disclosure, the media's role, the independent researcher's role? Should the media have a better right or more moral right to publish directly than the research?
Yes, I think there's a lack in the industry right now, is that researchers independently do the research and they issue a press release from their company, and hopefully the press will pick it up and write something about it. But there's not much collaboration, I think, between journalists and researchers in this way. Okay, there will be time for more discussion. I want to get to my next example. We were talking about building control systems. Building control system. Cabona, WDC. This is a little Linux computer with serial interfaces for Modbus, stuff like that. Ethernet on the other side. We connected directly to the internet, exposing Telnet, exposing Modbus TCP directly to the internet. The web interface was so utterly broken. I'm using that in my beginner level trainings for penetration testing. I'm using their system as the first exercise. Everybody gets it. Their local root vulnerabilities, they also had a hidden admin account. And also a static root password across, seems to be across their entire base. I like switch keys, but not in my ventilation system. So, first page again. I had nothing to do with this headline. It may not be the most catchy headline I have ever seen. With a few clicks, systems in several sensitive buildings can be manipulated against the backdrop of photos of vulnerable buildings. And we found about 800 of these devices controlling stuff like major railway hubs, Malmö Central, data centers all across the nation, including some pretty scary places. This police station. Yes, not yours. Okay. I had a nice interface to control the heating in the dog pens. Hot for the police dogs. Hot dog, anybody? I didn't do that. This morgue in a crematorium in Jönköping. What happens if you turn off the cooling in the morgue? I don't want to know. And some specifically, we found a school in my hometown of Linköping. In particular, the school where my kids go. This was personal. And we could, on video demonstrate how we could, from my laptop, this laptop, without any authentication, we could shut down the lights, turn them on again, unlock the doors, stood and janked the door, click on the laptop, and we could open. And that was very, very illustrative. That was on national TV. We also, here it comes, are you ready? This church. Hedemora kyrka, along with a range of churches for some reason, many churches. But in particular, Hedemora kyrka had their church bells hooked up to their Kabbalah system. And again, we could get on nice video how Christopher drove up to Hedemora, talked to the vicar, got permission to actually try clicking that button in the web interface. Dong, dong. And people started coming for prayer because they thought, oh, they were calling us. Which was a bit awkward. In Hedemora, apparently. Again, no advance warning. Kabbalah got this in their face. And the same principles as before, a detailed advisory to Kabbalah with 30 days before we released the details. Turns out that there were some people actually managing to find vulnerabilities, sort of reverse engineer them. Not that we had released any details, but just knowing the word Kabbalah, you should look and show them for Kabbalah, and people were quickly finding vulnerabilities. But Kabbalah reacted quickly enough that they could get all their stuff off the internet.
You believe that?
What? That?
Okay, will you fix that all of them and because you have contact with all the customers?
Well, I monitor the situation.
You did?
Yes.
So they disappeared, all of them? Good.
Momentarily. I look now and then, they are coming back online. Does anybody want the IP address for Malmö Central? But I think they have fixed the immersed vulnerabilities actually, so I think it's a much better situation. And this time, media went totally crazy. This And we continued with stuff around this, more issues that I won't go into for 1.5 weeks. And we basically owned the sort of media discourse for this week. And this was a crazy experience for somebody who's not doing this for a living. I don't know how many interviews I gave under strange circumstances. That was quite an experience. And I think maybe for me personally, this is one of the highlights that Anders Ygeman, Minister of the Interior, the minister responsible for, among other things, IT security, looking worried, reading the articles that I had come up with the basis for. Again, nice. And I don't think that this would have happened without publicity.
Could you say again, what's Cabona's role? They have a product. Are they responsible for the deployments and usages of the product also?
Well, they had Swiss cheese, which they sold to the customers. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has bugs.
Yeah, but you were did they take these offline? What could Cabona do that? Were Cabona doing a service contract, or was it up to
they had a service
1,000 owners of these to do things?
And I think that Cabona has their own service organization and consultancies. I don't know the exact how it's divided in practice, but it's obvious that Cabona had access to all the devices. There were Cabona service accounts defined, and also the networks, of course. Yes, very quickly they must have had a new firmware on tap, basically, because when they started coming back online, they were updated without the most obvious vulnerabilities. I no longer had access to any of them that I could test aggressively, so I can't guarantee anything. So was this a project a success? Well, how do you measure that?
Well, sales of the paper.
Sorry?
You can measure it by sales of the paper.
Yes. Well, yes. You should ask Christopher about that. I'm not in this to help the selling papers. But how do you measure it? Well, one of the things that made me happy is that I managed to get hundreds and thousands of routers secure in a week. If you ever had tried to do that by yourself, that's not easy. Some parts of the critical infrastructure in Sweden is more secure, and the feedback we have gotten from people, from our peers, has been almost exclusively very positive. Very few unhappy voices. And for me personally, my kids' school is more secure, so that's a big win. Another obvious metric: 100,000 devices running Telnet. Well, the latest figure is 90,000. Okay, that's a 10% decrease. That's 10%. That's not too bad, is it? Okay, 90% left. I don't know. I don't know how to interpret this. We did put info security on the political agenda pretty firmly, perhaps briefly. We did raise the general public awareness because this was stuff close to them. It was their routers, it were their buildings. And the thing that I really motivated the whole thing, the multiplicator effect, scaring the other vendors, showing them that if you don't do your stuff right, you may just end up on the first page. because you can't hunt these one by one. And I actually think that there are indications that people have been taking notice and fixing stuff because of this.
But the nice thing here was that you went on to a group of routers who actually are supported by something.
Yes, yes, of course.
But
I
all those bought by private persons
yes,
are practically unsupported.
yes, of course. And consumer routers are total crap. I knew that, but I still had this naive belief that but the routers that are actually provided by the operators, there's somebody there securing them. So again, success. I don't know. But perhaps a more relevant question is, would I do it again? Oh yes. So thank you.
Thank you, Leif, for a very interesting talk that stirred a lot of questions. I happen to know that we have people from the Swedish CERT in the audience. Robert, for example, and I wonder if you have some comment. What did you see of this from your side?
Yeah. When it comes to Cabona, we try to help Cabona a lot to handle this. First of all, the media storm, and also to it was a small company that had no clue on how to handle a large incident. From their perspective, this was a large incident, and they had no clue on how to do that. But they very quickly got on. Started to get a feeling on how they should do it. And I agree with Leif that this would never have, they would never have done anything unless this had been published in the newspaper.
I think I sent the full advisory to you as well.
Yes.
The day before publication.
Gunnar?
Yeah, just to add something that Cabona, CSO, someone high up in Cabona said that a lot of their customers did not want this additional security. I mean, they should speak for themselves, but they had a lot of times explained how this worked, and this was open, and this was like this, and they choose the easy route against the company's
Yes, and this is something which I learned. We talked earlier about the vendors, the operators, and the users. And when we started trying to find devices that we were allowed to hack, talking to the operators, useless. We had to go to the users. So I went to the headmaster of my school and explained this to her. She didn't really understand it, but she sort of pushed me upwards in the organization and we could get this. So the people caring about this is actually the people getting cold and sitting in the cold dark because the systems are insecure. Or hot, as the case may be.
Leif, have you actually seen any follow-ups on the DNC hack? I mean, there were thousands of screenshots published and so on. Also lots of waterworks with creative characters and stuff. Black screens.
I think, well, the attention, there was a brief peak of attention around that last summer. I think that managed to get some of them offline, but there are still lots of systems and more pop up. Of course, it would be illegal for me to look at those in Sweden, but I have, apart from that plant I showed you just now, I have managed to get some hydroelectric facilities of the network.
Did any laws change after the
Laws changing. It is yet again been suggested that incident reporting should be obligatory for authorities. That's the most concrete thing that has happened.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? No, then by that I close this session, and thank you so much for your interaction, and thank you for the speakers.